Hi, welcome back to my living room. Thank you for joining me here today. Today, we're going to be talking Reddit stories. I'm a therapist and I love analyzing all things pop culture, TV, movies, all the things. And today I have intentionally gathered some Reddit stories that I thought would be really interesting to kind of pick through and talk about and analyze. So why don't we just dive right in, because why beat around the bush? Okay, so I always come up to the camera and talk about what I'm drinking. And today I am drinking just a regular iced latte because that's what I do in the winter. But what's special about this is the mug that it comes in. My friend Kaylin is a pottery and ceramics teacher, and he's incredible. And he made us these 10-ounce cappuccino mugs that are for cappuccinos primarily, but I love iced drinks, so I'm just using them, and I love using them because they're beautiful. So grab a drink, cheers, join me, and let's go read some Reddit stories. Am I the asshole for not giving my girlfriend my social security number so she can run a background check on me? Interesting start. So this guy's asking for advice. I, 27 male, have been in a relationship with my girlfriend, 31 female, for almost a year now. Okay, that's a long time, a year. This evening, she sat me down and she said she needs to have a serious conversation with me, and she asked for my social security number. I said, absolutely not. Why would you need that? And she told me about her ex-boyfriend that was basically living a double life. He had a bunch of criminal charges in his past that he'd never told her about, and eventually exposed her to some sketchy and dangerous behavior before she broke things off after he cheated. I said, okay, thank you for telling me that, but what does that have to do with my social security number? When I said that I didn't want to give her my SSN, she got upset and then said that I don't understand what women go through and that it's about safety. And I admitted she's right. I have no idea what women go through, but that doesn't mean I'm giving my SSN out to a complete stranger. She says he isn't a stranger. He's one of her best friends and married to a close friend of hers. And I said, honey, that's great, but I don't know him. I don't trust him. I don't know him. That's my information you're asking for, and you can trust him with your personal information if you would like. But no one if I don't know them, they're not getting my SSN or critical details. That's just not happening. She said that our relationship isn't going to be able to progress unless I give my SSN, because she said she needs to know that she's safe, and she's offended that I don't trust her taste in friends. I got up and left at that point and told her I respect her concerns, but her past trauma doesn't give her the right to try and strong-arm me into giving out sensitive information to someone I don't know just because he works for the federal government and has access to a database. I used to work for the federal government, so I can say from experience everyone working there isn't some wonderful person. I'm not assuming he's a monster or anything, but just working for the feds doesn't prove anything to me. She called me insensitive and hasn't spoken to me since. Personally, I feel like she was gaslighting me into giving her what she wants, but I'm not sure. All right. So we've got an individual in a relationship for about a year, and his girlfriend's asking for his SSN. First reactions off the top of my head. So SSN, that's your social security number if you don't know that. But that's a very critical piece of information that not many people should have or should know. If someone does get a hold of it, it gives them access to your bank accounts, your medical records. They can open credit cards in your name. They can run a ton of debt under your name. They can do pretty much anything and everything they want to, including steal your entire identity and pose as you and get jobs as you. And it's basically a nightmare if somebody steals your social security number. So obviously the way that he's being protective about this makes a lot of sense, because you have to be in order to assure your safety in life. So I get where he's coming from, especially with the fact that he's like, but I don't know the people that you're talking about. Another interesting point to me is that I've had to have background checks before, because I've worked with kids, I've worked in a school, and so obviously you definitely have to have background checks and fingerprints run if you're going to work for a school. And in that entire process, never once for any of those background checks or anything, the fingerprints or anything, was I asked to give my social security number. So it's also a super big red flag to me that for whatever reason, she's asking him for her social security number, because you can run background checks without that. You can just do birth date, address, all of that stuff, and they'll give you a good amount of information. I understand that she's feeling insecure about it because she had a very negative past experience, and I'm sure that was very transformational to her worldview and the way that she approaches her relationship. So I understand also on her perspective that she's trying to hold her safety in high regard as well. But I also wonder if this is a long con, because what could really be happening is maybe she purposely picked this guy out. This is like so theoretical and so out there, but maybe this could be it. She picked this guy because he's really wealthy or has a lot of income in some way, shape, or form, or will get a lot. Maybe he's a trust fund kid. I don't know. Anyway, she picked him purposely, built a relationship with him to get to a point of trust within a year of the relationship, ask for his SSN, and then steal it and leave high and dry with his identity and access to his bank accounts and all this stuff. So that's just like a crazy theoretical. I'm like, what if this is all just one big long con and she's trying to get his money? Because that could totally be it. Or the probably more plausible thing is that she just feels incredibly insecure about the relationship. There's a line in here that I want to point out. And she says, she's offended that I don't trust her taste in friends. So her interpretation of this event is that he doesn't trust her taste in friends, which that's an irrational conclusion to come to, because first off, he's never met them. So why would he trust them? Secondly, it's an incorrect interpretation to say that he doesn't trust your taste in friends. It's that he doesn't trust people he doesn't know. That doesn't mean that you don't pick good friends or that they're kind, great people. It just means that he himself is more guarded when it comes to trusting people that he doesn't know, and that's okay. That's not wrong. It's just a protective factor. I agree with him. He also says in here, her past trauma doesn't give her the right to strong arm me into giving out sensitive information. Yeah, that's just called emotional manipulation. All she's trying to do is basically make him feel guilty enough for what's happened to her in the past that he gives out his social security number, despite the fact that he doesn't feel comfortable doing so. I really respect the fact that he has held his boundaries in this, and it sounds obviously okay. Every time you read a Reddit story, you have to take it with a grain of salt because it's coming from one view perspective. So the way he wrote this seems very logical, very like calm in a sense, and that may not be the actual situation. Maybe if we got her side of it, he blew up on her and went crazy when she asked him this, and he's never been more offended in his life. We don't know. So again, take it with a grain of salt. But from the information that we do have, it seems like he had a really rational reaction to this and was like, I appreciate that you've been through this, and I know that this has called your security into question, but I am not going to put my security at risk because you don't feel comfortable with your security. So he ends the paragraph asking for advice and says, personally, I feel like she was gaslighting me into giving her what she wants, but I'm not quite sure. So she is definitely trivializing his feelings about this, kind of minimizing them, saying that he shouldn't be so concerned, that her friends are great. Why doesn't he just trust her blindly? So it kind of is a form of gaslighting. I know that's a really big buzzword right now, and so I want to be careful when I use that word because I think people just use it off the cuff all the time to describe everything, and it's not quite accurate, obviously, the way that people use it, and so with so much freedom. But I do think this could qualify because she is trying to deny his reality and confuse him enough to be like, what are you talking about? Why wouldn't you trust my friends that you've never met? That's crazy. Like, I really think that you should give me your SSN. So anyway, if this guy were my client, I would really emphasize that he set his boundaries and that was an appropriate thing to do, and protecting yourself is an appropriate thing to do. And I think too, like, even him saying, I'm not assuming he's a monster or anything, but maybe just working for the feds doesn't prove anything to me. That's totally fair too. Like, he has a very rational take on this. And so If this guy were my client, I would definitely emphasize the fact that he set his own boundaries and set them gently but firmly. That's a really, really hard thing to do, and one that I think takes a lot of practice. So I would applaud him for that. And then I would talk to him about, where does he want to go with this relationship? Is this a relationship for him that he wants to continue to pursue? It sounds like she set this ultimatum that unless he gives his SSN, then they can't continue forward. But I always suggest a conversation to assess next steps. So I would probably recommend to him and encourage him to have a conversation with her. Though I would also want, of course, I want to hear what he wants. Like if he's like, no, I'm done with this relationship, then that's that. Then I'd understand that and we'd talk through that. But I do think a conversation of like, hey, I just don't understand why you want my SSN. If you want to run background checks, feel free. But you don't need my SSN to do that. So kind of trying to understand a little bit further about why she wants that specifically, and if there is any space for movement, or if it's just all very cut and dry in her mind. Let's look at some reactions and comments. Top comment, not the asshole. I just had a background check completed. I've had them every 5-ish years for the last 20 because I volunteer with some children. Some in state, some federal. I also have been screened by the government for a permit several times. I have never had to provide an SSN. Sadly, I think your girlfriend may be the criminal and you may be her long con mark. That's exactly what I said. And I didn't even read that comment. Yeah, I really hope that's not true, because what a sad way to spend a year of your life. And then imagine that guy, like this girl is saying, oh, I was conned by a guy, which, oh, that's another form. I meant to say that. Like, that's another way for her to build empathy, is like, oh, this has happened in me in the past. So you'd be less suspecting of her doing the same thing to you because she's trying to build empathy off of it. So it's actually a very smart manipulative move if she is in fact a long con in a long con game. All right, another top comment. Her government friend is committing a felony, not the asshole. You want no part of this. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That probably isn't legal for her government friend to be doing that, if she even has one. Questionable. Another top comment. Not the asshole. Oh, this is a good comment. I'm a federal employee who does have access to some systems like that in order to locate people, and it is 100% against the law to use them for personal reasons. We have to try all other reasonable ways to find someone before using these systems. There is something sketchy there. Also, you don't need an SSN to do a background check. A name and address or birth date are enough. That's really interesting. That's a really helpful comment, that this guy is like, look, I work in the industry. This isn't right. Yeah, something about this whole thing is just very fishy. Lots of red flags. Another one, not the asshole. You don't even know if she's telling you the truth. She could be stealing your SSN for all you know. Run away. Clearly, she isn't willing to address her trust issues. She needs therapy. Assuming everyone is a criminal and you need proof otherwise is incredibly toxic. Well said. No notes. One more. Wait. So in a year, she doesn't trust you and needs a background check run. That's acceptable and necessary, okay? Yet you not giving your SSN to a random stranger doing something illegal is you not trusting her, not acceptable or okay. What backwards logic is that? Not the asshole. I mean, it's pretty obvious. This guy's not the asshole. And if somebody asks you for something in a relationship that you do not feel comfortable with, it is quite all right to set that boundary with them and set it gently, yet firmly and clearly. All right, next story. Okay, this is a therapy-centric one. Am I the asshole for leaving my partner at home because his OCD made me late to a dinner party at a restaurant? My partner has OCD that has been progressively worsening over the past year. Before we leave the house, he has a routine of doing physical and mental checks, and these checks have been taking longer and longer. It's become such a problem that we're running late to almost everything. I've gently encouraged him to seek professional help, but he refuses, and he insists that he can manage this on his own. 2 weeks ago, we were invited to a dinner party at a restaurant hosted by my boss. I was recently promoted, and this was an important opportunity to celebrate and make a good impression. Knowing how long his checks take, I asked him to get started about 2 hours before we needed to leave. Even with the extra time, his check still took 30 minutes and we were running late. I was panicked about showing up late to such an important event, so I told him I couldn't wait any longer and I left without him. I ended up being 5 minutes late and told my coworkers the traffic was bad. No one seemed to care, but my partner is still mad at me 2 weeks later. He says I was insensitive and should have waited for him, but I feel like I couldn't risk being even later for something so significant for my career. I don't want to be unsupportive, but his OCD has been affecting both of us and he refuses to get help. Am I the asshole for leaving him at home? Okay, edit. I wanted to add that during his checks, I cannot talk. Otherwise, he has to start his checks all over. Interesting. Okay. OCD. OCD, also known as obsessive compulsive disorder, is a form of anxiety disorders. It falls under the anxiety disorders in the DSM. And there's actually different subtypes of OCD. So OCD, the basis of it is that you have obsessions and compulsions. And these obsessions are often unwanted, intrusive, and often negative and dysregulating thoughts. So they can range anything from like, what if my cat dies today when I leave for work, to am I a sex offender? And these thoughts are completely unwanted by the individual and they're completely dysregulating. So in order to help regulate their system, they come up with a compulsion to manage that thought, because the thought is so dysregulating. So the compulsions vary in manner and mechanism. So some of the compulsions could be turning on and off a light switch, or washing your hands, or having to check to make sure every door is locked so that your cat can't escape and you don't have to worry about them dying when you're at work. So like I was saying, there's subtypes of OCD, and there's a lot of different subtypes of OCD. So one of the most common ones that often it's reflected in TV shows and movies, and I would say pretty poorly so, but is the most common one is checking. So like I said, you're checking to make sure every door is locked. You check to make sure the stove is off, that the cat food bowl is filled, that all of the cabinets are shut. But you're doing this over and over and over and over again. Another subtype is counting OCD, where you're counting a specific number of times to help enforce a ritual. If I count to 22, then my cat won't die. If I turn on and off this light switch 10 times, then my cat won't die. So the thoughts are extremely hard for an individual to get rid of. And the reason that OCD is so difficult is because the more that they try to convince themselves that the thought isn't true, the more that they start to act in their compulsions and rituals. Actually, another subtype is contamination OCD, where you're extremely afraid of getting sick. And it's not the same as illness anxiety disorder, which is just strictly based around getting sick and being sick. Contamination OCD is really in depth. So you could be afraid that eating out at a restaurant, all of your food is contaminated with E. coli. You won't eat your food without washing your hands 15 times, even though you're only eating cereal with a spoon. So contamination OCD goes really deep. It's more than just getting sick. It's a fear of spreading germs, of getting germs, of food being contaminated, of your body being contaminated. It's really pervasive and extremely dysregulating. So those are just a few of the subtypes. There's a ton of different subtypes. OCD is an extremely difficult disorder to have. A lot of people go to therapy and can find it manageable and are able to work out of it. And there's a lot of people that take medication and live at a baseline with their OCD. It really ranges in variation of an individual's ability to work past OCD. But regardless, I have a lot of empathy for people with OCD because of how invasive it is in your day-to-day life and how impactful it is on those around you, especially those around you that may not quite understand what you're dealing with. So that's the background when we talk about OCD. Now, when we look at the context of this and we understand it, one of the things that we have to point out is the diagnostic features of OCD. So the DSM, which is the Diagnostical Statistical Manual for therapists, the DSM-5 specifically, it's what we use when we diagnose an individual with a mental illness. So one of the specific criteria that is mentioned in the posting, the original posting, is that his checks take up to 2 hours and have gotten worse over the last year. So in the DSM, the current diagnostic criteria for OCD includes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. The obsessions or compulsions are time-consuming. Example, taking more than 1 hour per day. So that fits under that specifically. I think it's pretty obvious that this guy does have OCD. I mean, obviously we don't have the full diagnostic criteria in front of us, but just from the few things that this original poster mentions, it does seem pretty fitting that this guy has OCD and that it is getting to a point of clinically significant distress, so much so that he missed his partner's work event and it took him 2 hours to get out the door. Can you imagine having to take 2 extra hours in the morning just to get out the door, and your baseline is already up here? And that was to get your baseline from here to here, when your baseline should just be down here. So I say that to just build empathy for people when they have OCD. I know it's really easy to look at people and be like, what are you doing? That's so weird. But it's not weird. It's because they're so anxious and their system is so dysregulated that they're trying to get to a place of semi-peace, like semi-functionality. And this guy is in the midst of trying to figure out what that looks like for him. Oh, okay, I got a kitty on my lap. I knew she'd come join me. And she's purring so loudly. Okay. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. So another thing that stuck out to me was her saying I was panicking about showing up late to such an important event, so I told him I couldn't wait any longer. He says I was insensitive and I should have waited for him, but I feel like I couldn't risk being even later. And 2 weeks later, he's still upset with me. I actually wonder if he's actually just upset with himself. A lot of people with OCD feel really frustrated by having OCD, understandably so. And so they know how hard it is on other people around him. They often are aware of how impactful it is on their day-to-day life. And telling them to just stop is not the solution. That's like equivalent to telling an abusive person, well, why don't you just leave your relationship? Like those things, that does not translate. Also the same as telling a hoarder, just give away all your stuff. Like that's literally so... It's very unempathic and it's very reductive. So I wonder, like, him being mad at her 2 weeks later, I think maybe he's just more frustrated with himself that he couldn't arrive to the party on time, even allotted extra time to do his checks, and he still wasn't able to do what he wanted. That's a really, really frustrating feeling and a really defeating feeling. So he could totally be mad at her and just be irrationally upset with her for leaving, which I will say, in my opinion, I think it's okay that she left. It was understandable. It was an important work event and she needed to go, and she gave him plenty of heads up that she needed extra time and that he needed extra time to get ready. So she did what she could to control the situation. And then once she recognized that, like, this thing isn't going to shift or change, then I have to make a decision that's best for myself right now. And so she did that, and that's okay. I think that she's right in doing that. But this is all to say, again, more compassion for him, as I wonder if he really just is upset with himself that he couldn't do that, and less upset with her because he knows that it was a disappointment to her that they couldn't leave in the time that she was hoping to. All right. And then she says, I don't want to be unsupportive, but his OCD has been affecting us and he refuses to get help. Am I the asshole for leaving him at home? Like I already said, no, I don't think you are. And she says, I don't want to be unsupportive. So her being unsupportive would just be an irrational ask of like, okay, like we have 10 minutes, you're going to be ready in 10 minutes, right? Like, that's not a compassionate understanding of where he's at mentally. So I do think that she was being supportive and saying, like, here's the time that we need to leave by. I know that your checks are important to you, and I see that, and I'm not going to try and stop you from doing them. So why don't we give you extra time to do them so that we can all leave the house at a good time? That's compassionate movement towards him. That is. And so I do think that she was being supportive to him, and I do think that she tried to put into control what she could, and once it again was out of her control, then she was like, I have to go do this for me. I think the next steps, I think if she was my client and her partner had OCD and she was really upset with him, I would try and maybe build some understanding of OCD and how it functions, how it works in the world, so that she can understand it more fully and have some compassion towards him. I already think she does. Like, I'm not saying she doesn't. I'm just saying, like, if she were my client, that's kind of the approach that I would take. And then I would understand more fully, like, what about him having OCD is so incredibly frustrating. Like, what about that for you is really, really hard, and empathize with her in that, because I know that it's really hard. I know that it can be incredibly debilitating on so many levels to be in a relationship with somebody who has OCD, and she's trying her best to show up in that relationship well. So that's another thing, is just like validating her experience of how difficult that can be sometimes. And that doesn't mean that, that's not to say that like he needs to feel ashamed of his OCD. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's just that there is a recognition that it's hard. It's just truth. It is really hard. And then I would encourage her to have a conversation with him again. Like, point out that even with the allotted time, he wasn't able to get to a place where he was regulated enough to leave the house on time. And if you can't leave your house on time for a day-to-day activity, I can't even imagine in the other ways that your OCD is impacting you. That's just one. We just saw one snippet of a 24-hour day in which his OCD impacted the entire day. So I can't even imagine the other facets of their relationship and of their day-to-day life that are being impacted by this. And so I think if she just really kindly but directly says that to him, like, this is bigger than you and me, and like, I want more for you. Like, I believe in more for you. I have hope for your healing in this. Like, I have hope for you that like you can make movement in being more regulated and finding yourself more whole and at peace. And if you meet somebody with that temperament and that idea, like, that type of conversation is going to go super far, hopefully. I mean, I really have not found a time where somebody's had a really negative response to me calling them out and saying like, I want more for you. I believe in more for you because I care about you. And I know that there's healing for you. And that's not to say that's like the perfect response every single time. It's just to say that like that usually ends up softening a conversation around asking somebody to get help for themselves. So that's what I would do. Yeah. That was a long one. Let's read some comments. Oh, there's an update. Exciting update. So this was posted 8 days ago. So that would be the 28th of December. And she posted an update on the 31st, New Year's Eve. Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. I had a conversation with my mother-in-law about this yesterday. She said he's been doing checks in her house on his lunch break for a few months now, even when she is home. He and I had reservations with our friends to this Christmas museum on Sunday, which we were 30 minutes late to due to his checks. He and I had a deep conversation about these issues, and he agreed to seek help. He made an appointment to see a therapist this morning. Thank you, everyone, for your advice. I didn't think this thread would be so helpful. Oh, I love it when Reddit wins. Oh, that's so great. Okay, that's a happy one. Let's read some comments. Your partner really does need help. This is now affecting your quality of life. To be honest, I would have left as well. Your partner can't have it both ways. Either seek professional help and understand that you will sometimes need to set reasonable boundaries. Yes. I have OCD. Oh, this will be a good comment because the person has first-hand insight. I have OCD. I'm sure it sucks for my partner. I would never expect them to be late to their own event, let alone a professional work event because of it. Allowing him to go through 30 plus minutes of unreasonable behavior that makes you late to things without challenge isn't being supportive. Being supportive is encouraging him to get help because his life and now yours is being negatively impacted by something he refuses to be treated for. Newsflash, he's not managing it if it's getting worse. So I agree with some of this. I agree that he's not managing it and that it's clearly getting worse and that he does need help. But I disagree with this poster saying that her not challenging it isn't being supportive. I disagree with that. I think it's not that black and white. I think being supportive can have a lot of layers. Like, her first support system is giving him extra time to do his checks so that they can leave on time. That's not working. Maybe that was managing the problem for a little while, but then it wasn't. And now maybe her next step in support is encouraging him to get help and seeing him through to therapy. Maybe that's the next layer. Support can have a lot of layers to it. It isn't just like a black and white thing, you know? And OCD is so much more complex than I think this person is making it out to be, which is ironic because they have OCD. So I guess I understand why they're saying that, and they have a valid point of view. I do get that. Maybe in their world, like, I need somebody to not do that because it encourages me to get help. Maybe that's where they're coming from. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think they're like far off base, but I just don't fully agree with their opinion. Okay, last one. I've gently encouraged him to seek professional help, but he refuses and insists he can manage it on his own. So that's them quoting the original poster. Not the asshole. Sorry, but while I'm very empathic to those dealing with mental health issues, I have far less empathy for people who refuse to get professional help when their life is so gravely impacted. He is not managing it on his own, and from what you say, he's getting worse. My brother-in-law lost his wife and almost lost his job before he finally got professional help and meds that allow him to live a better life. Sit him down and tell him that things are going to be changing. He will be getting professional help, or he'll need to find a divorce lawyer. Going forward, you'll give him the option to come to events with a stated time that you'll be pulling out of the driveway at that exact time. And if he's not in the car, he can either drive himself separately or stay home. It's time for some tough love. I don't know if I fully agree with this comment either. I just think that's too reductionistic to say I don't have a lot of empathy for people who refuse to get professional help when their life is so gravely impacted. There are so many complications to asking and getting help. One, do you even know where to start? Do you know where to find a good therapist? Do you know what a good therapist looks like? Do you know how to get to your therapist? Like, do you even have time in your day? Like, do you work a 9 to 5 and hopefully you can see your therapist after work? Maybe they don't work on the weekends, so you have to fill them in during a lunch break. What if your therapist doesn't do Zoom? Okay, that's just one. Two, money. Money is a huge reason that people don't go to therapy. A ton of therapists don't take insurance. It's just because we make more money when we don't. It's a matter of fact. Like, also, you run the risk of getting audited when you do have insurance. So if you don't keep very detailed financial records of how you are logging your hours, your notes, all of those things, you can get audited and then end up owing the insurance company that you're associated with a ton of money. So a lot of therapists won't even go through the hoops of getting insurance on their side because of how complicated it can be and because of how many complications can come in the future for you, especially if you're like, I can ask somebody to pay me $150 an hour and they will out of pocket, and I get to see them weekly and I get that money, versus like I get refunded a portion, maybe 70% of the income from the insurance company. So a lot of companies, like, you'll usually be making about $80 an hour if you are with the insurance company. So that comparative, like, charging, new therapists usually, if they're fully licensed, are charging about $120, $130 an hour. That's about what a therapist, I think, at least in my state, charges. I know it kind of varies state to state and specialties, but we'll just use $120, $130 as a baseline. So if you can't afford an extra $120 a week, that's a ton of money. That's $480 a month. That's almost $500. Not a lot of people right now have an extra $500 to throw around to get help. They don't. And I get that. And then finding a therapist who does take insurance. And then also, does your insurance even provide mental health help? Probably not, because it's America and our insurance companies suck. So very few insurance companies even offer mental health coverage. So that's another thing. Then on top of that, you add not only the difficulty with finding a therapist and then paying for a therapist. A lot of therapists that take insurance are fully booked because there's so few therapists that take insurance. So it's so backwards. Even finding one that takes your insurance might already be full for months, and then you can't get a time in. And then maybe the only time they do have to offer you is 10 a.m. on a Thursday when you're at work and you can't leave. So, sorry, I'm going off now, but like there's so many, those are just 3 reasons that people don't seek help. And then on top of it, like there's the stigma of asking for help. That's really hard. There's finding a good therapist and trusting your therapist. And then sometimes you find a therapist and you like them as a person, but sometimes they just suck as a therapist and they're not good. They don't guide you to goals. They don't see you through progress. They're not honest with you. And part of being a therapist isn't just validating your story all the time. Part of being a good therapist is calling out truth and understanding how to help you see that truth and understand it. And so there's so many layers to this. So I just disagree with this. I just disagree. And I know that this guy needs help. I'm in full agreement with that. But you can have compassion and patience for your partner while they work towards something. And I don't think ultimatums are healthy. And I know sometimes they end up being necessary, and I get that, and that's okay. But I don't think she's at a point of having to set these ultimatums. If you're not in the car at 10:01 and we're set to leave at 10:01, I'm leaving without you. I think that's so ungracious. Like, if he shows up at 10:05, is that okay? Like, I think that'd be okay, but like, I get that some people have different standards and expectations. So I don't think tough love really always works when it comes to mental health. Yeah, didn't mean to go on that rant, but here we are. Let's just move on to the next story so that I can calm down. Look at this cuddle puddle next to me. It's so cute. Okay. Oh, I like this one. Am I the asshole for refusing to pay for my sister's therapy after she ruined my wedding? Okay, so here's the deal. My 29 female wedding was supposed to be the best day of my life, right? You know the drill. Months of planning, stress, money, all that stuff. My sister, 25 female, was a maid of honor, and she always had a flair for drama. But I figured she could keep it together for one day. Spoiler alert, she didn't. Okay, so we've got a sister. She's 29. She's getting married, and her younger sister's 25. Fast forward to the big day. Everything's going smoothly until the reception. My sister gets wasted, like falling over, crying, causing a scene, wasted. She starts ranting about how I always get everything and how my wedding is just another example of me being the golden child in front of all my guests, including my in-laws. It gets worse. She actually grabs the mic during the speeches and starts going off about her struggles and how it's not fair that I'm happily married while she's single at my wedding. The whole vibe turned awkward, and my husband's family was just shocked. People started leaving early, and I spent the rest of the night trying to put out fires instead of enjoying what was supposed to be our special day. That's sad. Now, weeks later, my parents say my sister is struggling with her mental health. No kidding. And they want me to pay for her therapy. Their reasoning is that since I'm the successful one, I should help out, and I should show them that I'm a good sister. But like she ruined my wedding, I don't think I should have to foot the bill for her meltdown. I'm still angry about the whole thing, and honestly, I feel like she owes me an apology first. But my parents think I'm being cold-hearted, and it's my responsibility to support her. They're pressuring me hard. But I just don't think it's fair for her to ask me to pay. I just don't think it's fair to ask me to pay for something she clearly needs to take accountability for. So, am I the asshole? I already know. I haven't actually read the comments on this one yet. No, you're not the asshole. I can tell you that right now. I have a very strong feeling that all the Reddit comments probably agree with me on this one. I mean, it's not a far stretch to say that. This feels like one of those posts that you just post to get some vindication, even though you already know you're not the asshole, and I get that. So if she needs some validation because she's living in crazy world, then that's understandable. Okay, so she's always had a flair for drama. I wonder what that means. That's my first, like, point that I'd like to make. What does that mean? She has a flair for drama. Does that mean she always has to be the center of attention? Does that mean she's always getting wasted? Does that mean that she has, I don't know, always makes situations more intense than they need to be? Curious what she means by that. So okay, the sister has some deep-seated issues. I mean, clearly, like, to not have the wherewithal to understand that, like, your one job for your sister's wedding is to be there for your sister and not get blackout drunk. I mean, that's like a pretty low bar. And the fact that she couldn't do that, I think, means that she has a lot going on, probably mentally in the back of her head. Like, I do think alcohol kind of brings forth some of the stuff that we hold subconsciously. So the fact that her sister started ranting about, I always get everything, or how her sister always gets everything, and how my wedding is just another example of me being the golden child. So clearly, I mean, the sister has probably felt that way for a long time, that her sister is perfect and always gets her way. And so maybe this was like some subconscious response to that, is like, I'm so sick of my sister being the perfect child that even though I'm not consciously thinking about getting drunk and ruining her day, like, I feel like she deserves to have her day ruined because I'm so sick of this. Even though that's not reality and that's not accurate portrayal of what's actually going on with her sister being perfect and all this stuff. There's clearly some issues there. I wonder too, like, we have no context. We don't have, this is a very short Reddit posting. So I'm like, okay, I'll just go off of what's written. But the next thought I had was maybe alcoholism. I mean, the fact that she got so wasted at her sister's wedding, and obviously alcohol is readily available at a wedding, so that's not really saying much. I mean, how many Reddit stories are on Reddit about people who got wasted at a wedding and make a poor decision? There's a plethora, so this is not anything out of the ordinary. And again, like, I don't know these people in real life. I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. But there's just some subtle flags here that maybe this could be a bigger issue than they're making it. And oftentimes in families that have an addict in them, there is some form of enabling going on. And that's clear here at the bottom. Now, weeks later, my parents say my sister is struggling with her mental health and they want me to pay for her therapy. And I don't think I should foot the bill, but my parents think I'm being cold-hearted and that's my responsibility to support her. They're pressuring me hard, but I don't think it's fair to ask me to pay for something that she clearly needs to take accountability for. This is so weird. Why are her parents not helping her sister? Like, what this is becoming is now, the sister is now becoming a parentified adult. And if you don't know what that term means, a parentified adult essentially means that you parent yourself or you parent others as the child instead of your parents doing their job as parents. So this is a lot of people grow up as parentified children, and they often end up being super individualistic. They don't rely on others for help. They grow up way too quickly. And it's really sad. And so what her parents are doing are not only enabling the sister's behavior, but parentifying the other sister and saying, this is your responsibility to take care of your sister. No, it's not. There's no, not even a little bit is this her responsibility. And she's not wrong in saying, like, I deserve an apology for my sister completely taking the show at my entire wedding, which is the one day that it's so okay for it to be all about me. So I feel a little feisty for this sister, and I feel bad for this other sister because, yeah, it's obvious she's struggling with her mental health. She really, really needs some help. But the parents aren't helping in this. And the parents are pressuring her in this very weird and odd way. I don't get it. Anyway, all to say, she's not the asshole. She should not be paying for somebody else's therapy unless she's just feeling that generous, which is great if you are. But yeah, you're not required to pay for somebody else's therapy. Okay, top comment. Not the asshole. She's not your responsibility. If anything, why aren't your parents helping her? Great question. Was wondering the same thing myself. The comment to that was, honestly, no idea. Original poster's comment. Honestly, no idea. they're acting like it's all on me because I'm more stable or whatever, but it feels like they're just passing the responsibility instead of dealing with it themselves. That totally could be. Okay, what else? Second top comment. Not the asshole. It seems your sister is not your only problem. Tell your parents one firm no, then refuse to discuss it anymore. OP responded to that. I think you're right. I just need to say no and stop letting them guilt trip me. Yeah, it sucks. Like, family is the easiest place to be guilt tripped from because they're your people, you know? Your blood is thicker than water, as they say. So it makes a lot of sense that she's like, yeah, they're guilt tripping me and I'm kind of falling for it. Understandable. It's hard not to. Like, you do, at the end of the day, I'm sure this original poster really cares for her family, but the asks they have of her are incredibly irrational. Okay, another comment. Not the asshole. I would tell your parents not only are you not helping her, but until she's mentally stable and apologizes, you think it's best for you and your sister to not see each other for a while. And if they interfere, you will start to distance yourself from them too. OP did not respond to that one. I think that could go either way. I think that really is like up to original poster if she would find that helpful to not be in this vicinity of her sister for a little while. Sometimes that works really well with people while they take a hard look at their life and reflect, and they're like, okay, I understand why this person took space from me. Like, yeah, I do suck. I was really crappy in that moment. And then other times it doesn't work. It just fuels their internal rage and vindication that they're right about something, because they're like, how could they be turning away from me? And so obviously it just depends on the health of the sister. Like, maybe the healthy sister being in proximity to the unhealthy sister will actually still encourage her to get therapy. Like, maybe that's something that is important. And so I think it's really up to the original poster if she thinks it's best to not see her sister for a little while. Yeah, and her own boundaries and what's healthy for her, especially as she starts off her marriage, you know, like, that's not exactly the foot you want to start off your marriage on, is like having a ton of intense family drama going on in the background. So, okay. I hope her sister gets help, and I hope that she had a good wedding. Oh, okay. So I taught my cats that if I double snap, they get a treat. So when I snap, did you just see them perk up because they thought they were going to get a treat? And I feel really bad. I'm so sorry, sweet little angels. Oh, they still love me. It's okay. Oh my God, I'm so sorry if you hate cats, but it's just because you haven't had the right cats. I fully believe that. Yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for coming along. It was a lot of interesting ones today. I really enjoyed it. I enjoy looking through these Reddit stories. It's just fun. It's just like so fun for me. I just love doing this. All right. I feel like I need a better outro than I have had, but maybe just a casual outro is fine. I don't know. All right, stay tuned for my next episode. I don't know what it's going to be, per usual. I was thinking of doing something with Friends because I am obsessed with that TV show. It's my favorite show. I've seen it through so many times. So maybe I'll do something with that. Maybe not, though, so don't get your hopes up. But if you have any ideas for me, comment, because I'd love some more ideas of what could be fun. All right, thanks for joining me. Bye.